Next, via Zoom is to be Scott Rogers. And Scott has a bad habit of volunteering for everything. So Terry took time and wrote it down. Vice President of Government Affairs for the Eau Claire Area Chamber of Commerce, Midwest Interstate Passenger Rail Commission, listed as a financial officer in addition to being a private sector designee from Wisconsin. Member of the Chippewa St. Croix Passenger Rail Commission, seeking an intercity passenger train from Eau Claire to St. Paul. And he chairs the West Central Wisconsin Rail Commission in his spare time. Terry puts in his spare time, he says hello to his wife. Predating Terry, Scott came from passenger rail in Iowa, for those of you who remember way back. So this has sort of been a lifelong avocation of his. Are we ready?
I appreciate the introduction, John. I also appreciate the chance to speak remotely today. In fact, my wife Shirley and I do travel by train a lot. We had hoped to make a weekend trip to Milwaukee, and because of some family obligations, that didn't work out. And it turns out if we had planned to take the Empire Builder yesterday, we would have arrived in Milwaukee a little after midnight this morning. So perhaps it was best that I'm doing it remotely this time. As John mentioned, I do wear quite a few hats, although I think it's not as many hats as Mark Quam does. So we might want to compare notes on some of the things we do. I am Vice President of Government Affairs at the Eau Claire Area Chamber of Commerce. That's actually my day job. And the Eau Claire Chamber has had a long time part of our legislative agenda to have passenger rail service for our area. I also help manage the Chippewa Valley Chamber Alliance, which is the 3 chambers here who do an annual legislative day in Madison. And we've been advocating for passenger rail for a while. And when I moved to Wisconsin 21 years ago, or I should say moved to Eau Claire, there was already an organization in this area, the West Central Wisconsin Regional Rail Coalition, that was established by many of our community, education, and business leaders to try to have passenger rail service to our area. And then more recently, we started the Chippewa St. Croix Rail Commission, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. And then 4 years ago, I was appointed to the Midwest Interstate Passenger Rail Commission by the governor as the private sector representative. And so what I'm going to do today is give a quick update first on what's happening with MIPRC, because I think there's some interesting things there, and then what we're doing in the West Central Wisconsin area with our rail commission to prepare for future passenger rail service. The MIPRC just had its annual meeting last month, September 18th to 20th in Normal, Illinois, and also Chicago. Here's a picture from the website and the 3 Wisconsin representatives who attended, which included me, John Spiros, who is a state legislator from Marshfield, and Jennifer Murray, who is the director of the Bureau of Transit, Local Roads, Railroads, and Harbors at WisDOT. And I did take the train there, so that was my last train trip. It was from Red Wing. Shirley took me over there early Sunday morning. We had a great breakfast at the St. James Hotel. And then as I was looking at my trip on the Empire Builder, which had been running on time, suddenly, if you look at the map and you see service disruption, it's not always good news. Eventually, because of some mechanical issues, they did get the train going and we ran about 3 hours late. Red Wing in September is a nice place to wait for a train. However, beautiful riverfront, the Viking, Mississippi happened to be there. So eventually we were about 3 hours late along the way. The train did come in, we crossed the Mississippi, and Amtrak was kind enough to give everybody on the train a box lunch because we were running 3 hours late. The commission meeting started the next day. We started out in Chicago Union Station learning about some of the long-term improvements that are planned there because of the expansion that Derek talked about. And this was the most recent time I got to see Derek because he was, of course, part of this commission meeting. We all took the train to Normal, Illinois in the new venture cars. We had a full business class car to ourselves, and it was fun to experience riding on a train at 110 miles an hour, passing all of the traffic on Highway 50, I-55. And one of the things I was excited about is we've been talking a long time in our area about Normal, Illinois, because it's a mid-sized Midwest city with a state university and how much economic development has happened around their station since they opened it about 10 years ago. And I'll commend to you, there's an interesting article about it at the High Speed Rail Alliance's website about what's happened at Normal, and an interview with Mayor Chris Coos there at the High Speed Rail Association website. And at the meeting, we did get a chance to see the station, which you see in the lower left. Upper right, that's Chris Coos, the mayor, welcoming us to Normal. You have Pete Amastor from Michigan DOT and Carolyn McGinn, who just finished a term as chair of the commission, who is a Republican state senator from Kansas, and a couple of pictures from the meetings that we had over a couple days. We did have updates from all of the states involved in the commission. There are 8 states, and I will direct you to the MIPRC website. You can see the visuals that were presented and a synopsis from the staff of the commission as to what happened at that meeting. I mentioned Representative John Spiros from Marshfield, who attended the meeting. There are 4 commissioners from each state. One is private sector, which I serve. Jen Murray is the governor's designee, and then there are 2 legislators who are appointed by each house of the legislature. And since I've been in the commission, this was the first time we've had a legislator attend. And I just put up here, Representative Spiros did a very nice Facebook post on his Facebook page about his participation in the meeting. I did take the train home. This is a picture from the platform. That's actually a northbound train in the picture, but at the platform, most people took the train back up towards Chicago, but there were a few of us from Missouri, Kansas, and Amtrak who took the train southbound, and this is us on the platform. And this is the route I took, so it's truly trains, planes, and automobiles. I rode Amtrak, I rode the light rail in St. Louis, I rode Delta back to MSP, as did Greg from the Minnesota DOT. We were on the same itinerary. And then I took a Tesla Greenfeet shuttle back to Eau Claire that was door to door that just started. And the connection between St. Louis Gateway Station and the airport in Lambert Field was on the light rail. And unfortunately, one of the things that happened was we had as we approached St. Louis, we got stuck behind a disabled freight train. We were about an hour late, but Greg and I just barely made our connection. Thankfully, the line at security was shorter than usual. And just if you want to think about this and plan to attend next year, the annual meeting will be at Minneapolis, St. Paul, the date to be announced. And Mark Quam also attended the meeting as well. That's a quick update there. And I also going to give you an update on what's happening in West Central Wisconsin. So I mentioned the West Central Wisconsin Rail Coalition. We've been around since the late 90s, advocating for passenger rail service to our area. And Lisa showed you the map of Wisconsin showing both the potential line through Eau Claire as the additional Chicago to Twin Cities service, and a regional corridor that we've been looking at between Eau Claire and the Twin Cities, which is about the same length as the Hiawatha corridor and has a tremendous amount of traffic and activity, economic activity between our communities and the Twin Cities. And one of the things the coalition has done over the years is looked at what's happening around the country, how can we apply that to our area, and the various commissions and authorities that have operated in other locations, either to create services or to operate them, got our attention. And the picture that they showed you at the beginning of me is actually by Eau Claire City Hall. And one of the things we benefited from in this area is our counties and municipalities have been very interested in getting service to our region. And they actually then offered to create a commission under state statutes that allow planning of transportation projects. And so we had 3 counties and 6 municipalities in 2021 pass joint resolutions to create the commission. The members are those 9 government entities. They also invited the Rail Coalition to be a voting member. And then we have ex officio members that have been very involved in the planning that the commission has been undertaking, including the host railroad, DOTs from both Wisconsin and Minnesota, the 2 counties in Minnesota, our Regional Planning Commission, which is our MPO for the region, and then our institutions of higher learning, which include 3 state universities that are along the line. Purpose of the commission is to advance the public interest by pursuing passenger rail service and other public transportation improvements. And we call it the St. Croix and Chippewa Valleys because those are how we refer to those regions when we look at economic activities. So the options we've been pursuing are any of those that could bring passenger rail service to our area, and hopefully all of them. That includes frequent regional service between Eau Claire and the Twin Cities, through service Chicago to Milwaukee to the Twin Cities, which is the WisDOT Corridor ID application, throughway shuttle connections to existing Amtrak stations, such as to the TCMC service at Toma from Menominee, Eau Claire. And many of you know that the long distance study is underway, and as that comes to fruition, when the North Coast Hiawatha is restored, certainly we could see some of the long distance services running through La Crosse and some through Eau Claire. The other thing that is important with the implementation of the bipartisan infrastructure law is innovation, and what are some other ways that we can see passenger rail service implemented. And certainly one of those is Brightline, which presents some interesting thought processes how you can pursue passenger rail service. And as Lisa mentioned earlier, there is a corridor ID application that was put in by the Chippewa St. Croix Rail Commission with the support of the DOTs in both states, Ramsey and Washington counties, and the Union Pacific Railroad. And we have a few innovative things regarding this application that I wanted to point out. These are some of the entities that supported the application. Naturally, it has to meet transportation needs, which would be true of every application that has gone in. But among the things that we're looking at is a competitive selection process for the operator of the service. We've been actually working with a trade association called the Association for Innovative Passenger Rail Operations. It's basically led by these 4 entities who are contract operators of passenger rail service, both in the US and internationally. And what's notable is that all 4 of them operate as many trains and carry as many passengers as Amtrak does. An example would be Herzog operates the services you see on this map. And here's a quick list, might be hard to read on the screen, of some of the services that are operated by those 4 carriers. There is an example of an intercity service that Herzog operates for CT Rail in Connecticut, and the state of Connecticut DOT undertook a similar process where they said, we're going to have a competitive process for operating our new CT Rail service, and they selected Herzog as the operator. Closer to home, one of the things we learned at MIPRC is that there's another case of a new service that a different operator was selected. Illinois has decided to have Metra operate their new service to Rockford that they have now funded. Another thing we're looking at as an innovation is a different method for access to the host railroad. Union Pacific has put a lot of investment in this corridor. They've put in the PTC we need for passenger rail service, and we have been talking to them about a different scenario that would be a negotiated access, a market rate for using the existing capacity that's available on the railroad, and would potentially require less upfront capital to keep the railroad whole in terms of its capacity. We're also interested in the idea of possibly it being a test location for zero emission equipment. Stadler talked to us about the new hydrogen fuel cell service or train sets that they have available. They have one that they're implementing in Southern California, and that this might be an interesting corridor because of its length and where the trains could run back and forth, to try that out. And then transportation-oriented development is something we think is critical. We have the example of Normal, Illinois, where it's a way to justify the service, a way to have it create benefits for our communities. And we think transportation-oriented development is one of those things that helps make service possible, helps make it important to our communities and helps justify any public investments that might go into it. We've actually established a station planning and development committee that's working on some of those issues in advance of hearing about the expected announcements from FRA about the corridor ID program. This is a map from TCMC, and one of the things that is important, and Jim Matthews is going to be speaking next, and I think I'm quoting him at least pretty close when I say he has said something like, trains make money, but not for the railroad, and that's because of all the other benefits that we get from them. And one of the things that if we're going to be asking for public support here in Wisconsin, local or state, the question is going to be, what are we going to get back from that? An example would be on the TCM materials. Wisconsin's annual operating share is going to be expected to be up to $3.6 million, but the economic benefits to Wisconsin are estimated to be $25 million. And the state of Missouri at TCMC a couple of years ago revealed the results of their study of the Missouri River Runners. You might be aware, if you follow politics, that Missouri is certainly a conservative state, and their DOT said we spend around $8 to $9 million in the annual cost to our river runner service, but that it brings in $22 million in annual tax revenue and over $200 million in other economic activity. And in fact, that's led their legislature to increase their funding, and they have put in corridor ID applications to add more service on their existing corridor and to consider service to other corridors. Here's some information if you want to follow up either with me or to some of the resources that we have from West Central Wisconsin. Appreciate the time and look forward to seeing you in person perhaps next time.